even enviable. But every time envy appears in the Bible, we see three things. We see deception, we see destruction, and we see death. There are quite a few examples that we have in the Bible of envy. The first of which is found in Genesis, where Cain envied Abel, and as a result, what did he do? He killed his own brother. Jacob's sons become envied of Joseph, so they hated him and sold him into slavery, doing away with him. There's an episode in Exodus where Miriam and Aaron let me backtrack. Moses, Miriam, and Aaron were a team that God assembled. And they were assembled to help the nation of Israel succeed. But as a result of the relationship between God and Moses, Miriam and Aaron became a little jealous, so much so that as a punishment, Miriam was stricken with leprosy, only to have her brother to ask God to remove it. The disciples were each riddled by envy of each other. And in today's lesson, in 1 Samuel chapter 18, we see that King Saul envied David to the point that he even threw a spear at him. Well, let's take a look. 1 Samuel chapter 18, starting in verse 5. David was successful in all the missions on which Saul had sent him. And so Saul made him an officer in his army. This pleased all of Saul's officers and men. As David was returning after killing Goliath, and as the soldiers were coming back home, women from every town in Israel came out to meet King Saul. They were singing joyful songs, dancing, playing tambourines and lyres. In their celebration, the women sang, "Saul has killed his thousands, but David tens of thousands." Saul did not like this, and he became very angry. He said, "For David they claim tens of thousands, but only thousands for me. They will be making him king next." And so he was jealous and suspicious of David from that day on. So we're going to see that there are some things that envy creates. The first of which envy creates is anger. David walked according to the will of the Lord at this time. He battled victoriously, and he won the admiration of his people. But he wasn't ruined by their praise. The women came out when he returned from battle, dancing and singing. David responded to this praise with humility. But Saul responded with anger. When you become envious of others, their success and recognition can cause you to become angry. And envy keeps you from hearing the positive things said about you, and instead it becomes an unwinnable contest. You'll find no peace, no joy in your life because you are too busy being angry. Well, here's that reflection for you. Have you ever found yourself so angry that something or someone have robbed you of your peace and joy? Well, the next thing I want you to think about is, what did you do about it? So, we see that envy creates anger. We see envy creates violence. 1 Samuel 18, verse 10. The next day, an evil spirit from God suddenly took control of Saul. Now, who did the evil spirit come from? It came from God. And he raved in his house like a madman. David was playing the harp as he did every day, and Saul was holding a spear. I'll pin him to the wall, Saul said to himself, and he threw the spear at him not once, but twice. But David dodged each time. So, this envy creates violence. The evil spirit came upon Saul. But this time, David's music did not help. It didn't work on soothing the savage beast. Why? Because Saul's envy put him in a situation where he could not be calmed. A friend of mine's grandfather often said, "He whom the devil would destroy, he must first make angry." So he had caused ignorance to allow him to become violent. And anytime that you have too many problems or too many Sauls in your life, they can create problems. No matter what David was doing to help, Saul was not going to be calmed. Instead, he wanted to kill David. When envy is not dealt with, it becomes dangerous. Now, notice the only difference in the letter anger and danger is the letter D, and I usually attribute that to the devil. So your anger turns into violence. Notice how quickly Saul became violent. He went from doing something he would normally try to killing David. This is what envy turned into. It becomes violent. So after it becomes anger, after we see it becomes violent, it creates fear. Envy creates fear. 1 Samuel 18, verses 12 through 16. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had abandoned him. So Saul sent him away to put him in command of 1,000 men. David led his men into battle and was successful in all he did because the Lord was with him. Saul noticed David's success and became even more afraid of him. But everyone in Israel and Judah loved David because he was such a successful leader. When the Lord makes you successful, others may become fearful. Saul was afraid of David because God was with David. Saul's next move was to remove David from his position as the court musician and the captain of the bodyguard and make him captain over 1,000 men and send them out to battle. He was hoping that the Philistines would kill David. But the more successful David was, the more Saul feared him. And apart from God, there is always fear. What is fear? False evidence appearing real. Envy goes from anger to violence to fear because you don't realize that you're alone. The next thing that we're going to see is envy creates scheming. 1 Samuel 18, starting at verse 17. Then Saul said to David, "Here is my older daughter Merab. I will give her to you as your wife on condition that you serve me as a brave and loyal soldier and fight the Lord's battles." Saul was thinking this way. The Philistines would kill David, and he wouldn't have to do it himself. David answered, "Who am I? And what is my family that I should become the king's son-in-law?" But when it came time for him to marry Merab, or for Merab to be given to David, she was given instead to a man named Adriel from Maholah. This is rather devious. This was a rather devious action of Saul. Saul's daughter, Michal, however, fell in love with David. And when Saul heard of this, he was pleased. He said to himself, I'll give Michal to David. I will use her to trap him, and he will be killed by the Philistines. He is obsessed with this killing by the Philistines. So for the second time, Saul said to David, you will be my son-in-law. He ordered his officials to speak privately with David and tell him, the king is pleased with you, and all the officials like you. Now is a good time for you to marry his daughter. So they told this to David, and he answered, it's a great honor to become the king's son-in-law. Too great for someone poor and insignificant like me. What we see here is Saul is determined to get David killed. But how many of us know that the Lord will fight your battles? Verse 24. The officials told Saul what David had said. And Saul ordered them to tell David, all the king wants for you as a payment for the bride are the foreskins of 100 dead Philistines, as revenge on his enemies. This was how Saul had planned to have David killed by the Philistines. Saul's officials reported to David what Saul had said, and David was delighted with the thought of becoming the king's son-in-law. Before the day was set for the wedding, Saul and his men went and killed 200 Philistines. He took their foreskins to the king and counted them all out to him so that he might become son-in-law. So David had to give his daughter Michal in marriage. So Saul had to give his daughter Michal in marriage to David. Saul was essentially just a good old backstabber. So we see that envy creates scheming. You have to be careful when you plot and scheme against God's people. It only makes them more favorable to God. Saul could not figure out what to do with David. So he became a good schemer. He was looking for ways to put David in dangerous situations. Saul had promised to give David his older daughter Merab for his wife, but then he deceived David and gave her to someone else. Saul gave his daughter Michal to be his wife. Saul was plotting against David the entire time. For a dowry, Saul required David to bring him 100 foreskins of the Philistines. But he was hoping David would be killed in the process. But instead, David killed 200 Philistines in order to win his wife. When you begin to plan ways to destroy your enemies, it always backfires. In fear, you begin to do things that you didn't even know you were capable of doing. So, what we have here is the reality of envy. And that is, envy, first off, is unhealthy. Envy paints the inside of the heart as an ugly black organ. Envy, as I said, is unhealthy. Proverbs 14:30 says, a sound mind makes for a robust body, but a runaway emotions corrode the bones. Think of envy in the terms that it's bone cancer. Rot means to decay. The Hebrew culture was found to be in the bones. Thus, envy is a slow death of gangrene that rots you from the inside out. It first starts by killing your contentment, then it slowly siphons the joy out of your life. Something tells me you know some people like that. It abducts the ability to enjoy what you have. It rots your reasoning, and it ruins your relationships. So, it's unwise as well as unhealthy. When it is unwise, you're in a battle that you can't win. Job 5:2 says, the hot temper of a fool eventually kills him. The jealous anger of a simpleton does her in. So it's unhealthy, it's unwise, and it's unloving. Love looks through a telescope. Why does it do that? What does a telescope allow you to do? It allows you to see more. It allows you to see vast objects. Envy looks through a microscope. I had the pleasure years ago of working on a very powerful microscope that will allow me to see bacteria on an item or on some substrate. And it blew me away to think that there was a microscope that powerful. Well, that's how envy usually looks. Where love looks through a telescope. Love allows you to see more. This lesson shows us a picture of the terrible evils of jealousy and envy. King Saul becomes so jealous, so envious of David that he progressively deteriorated mentally and spiritually. He became just crazy. He experienced episodes of insanity and made an attempt after attempt on David's life. So, there are a few things that I want you to do. I would like for you to review your life. Have you ever been jealous or envious of someone? And if you have, why? Do what Saul should have done. Reflect over your life and see how the Lord has blessed you. Think of His goodness to you. And learn how to count your blessings. Not someone else's blessings. Count your blessings. Seth Sleeter wrote these words. It's like it was yesterday. I was praying for a miracle, scared to have a little hope, and now looking back today, seeing all things you've done, I can't even add them up. 1, 2, 3, up to infinity. I've run out of numbers before I could thank you for everything. God, I'm still counting my blessings. All that you've done in my life. The more I look into the details, the more of your goodness I find. Father, on this side of heaven, I know I'll run out of time, but I'll keep counting my blessings, knowing I can't count that high. And I know the seasons. Let me help you out here. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3, there are 28 seasons. And not all those seasons are pleasant. But we see here, he says, I know the seasons, never lost forever. So God, I will remember all of the reasons my heart has to be grateful. All the times you've been faithful to me. Well, if you're available, I'm putting my plug in for my class. Join me on Thursday at 1:15 in the concourse, and you'll get the remedy for envy. Or take a look on YouTube on Monday at 12 noon, and you once again will see the remedy of envy. Until then, I pray that something has been said that will cause you to think a little different, that will cause you to act a little different, and will keep you on your knees so that you are thankful for all the many blessings that God has bestowed upon you. Until the next time, please be in prayer for Reverend Nelson. Please be in prayer for your church. Please be in prayer for the ministries of your church. God bless you, and we look forward to seeing you the next time.